Hello everyone, welcome back to the Genomics Bootcamp and to the video series about the most important and most useful R commands. This time we will be talking briefly about reading files from your hard disk and writing out text files to your hard disk. Until now in this series we were dealing with the Palmer penguins dataset, which is actually already located in R, but many times what you want to do is to read in some external data set from your hard disk to R, where you want to do something with it and perhaps visualize it, perhaps modify it, or, well, there is just a million things you might want to do with data sets. For this, you definitely need to read it in, and then many times also you want to write it out. There are many possibilities to read in and write files depending on the file at hand. So if it is a space delimited file, tab delimited, comma delimited, Excel, or any other type of file that has a certain specific feature that you need to take into account. If you want to know all the possibilities, so what you can do is go into, well, the RStudio and start to type, for example, read. And then it comes out basically all the options and possibilities. Generally, the read with the dot there, these are from base R, and then with the read and the underscore, these are from tidyverse. So you see that there is lots and lots of possibilities for this. I will use or demonstrate just one, and this is again my personal favorite, and this is the read underscore delim, so read delimiter. So this is generally a more universal one, because then you can, or actually have to, specify the delimiter yourself. And the delimiter itself is what is located between the two columns in the text file. So of course, if you want to read in something, you need some kind of a data set. And for this particular example, I used the data set from the Tidy Tuesday exercise from 2nd of August, 2022. So this is how the data set looks like. It is actually a data set from telemetry records from the Oregon spotted frog by Michael J. Adams. It has a number of columns, for example, the site, the subsite, the habitat type, and so on. So there are the column names in the row 3 here, and then there are the certain values for each of the rows. And then the two columns, which is the most important part here, they are divided or delimited by a comma here. So what is the most important here, that the actual data set starts from, well, line 3 here. The line 3 is the so-called header. And then afterwards, there are the observations. And as mentioned, there is a comma between the two columns. Coming back to R, we take this one into consideration when we are reading in our data. So I chose to read this one in with the read underscore delim. So I give the full path here, but of course, if this particular file is in your working directory, then you don't need the full path, just enough if you have the actual file name. And this is, well, here I would underline, this is the entire file name. So you also need the file extension itself. Well, this is the part that, well, some people sometimes forget. So this is why I underline it. So you need the full file name in the quotation marks. So our delimiter, as mentioned before, is a simple comma. And because our actual data is starting from line 3, that means that we want to skip the first 2 rows. So that is why we have this skip equal 2 here. So actually it starts to read in from line 3. If we go back briefly to the description of the read delim, well, R function, here we can find that the column names are by default considered. So the column names are equal true. So then we don't need to specify that the third row is actually the column names, but it takes it automatically. By chance, if you don't have column names, or for some reason you want to skip them in the file that you are actually reading in, then you have to specify column names, so col_names equal to false. But we are happy with this solution here. So we run it and we actually read it into R with the 10 columns with the characters, and then 10 or 6 columns with a double. So this is a number in these columns. So if we click on this, so basically what we have is the data already in R in the format that we are used to. The other part of the video I want to talk about briefly is about writing out the R data sets onto your computer. So you want to do this one also from time to time, or well, depending on, of course, what you do. Here, there are also many possibilities. The same way, if you start to type right here, so you have all the options. Again, with the dot is generally from base R, and with the underscore, these ones are from tidyverse. So for this particular example, we take the data set we loaded in. So this is the all frogs. And for example, we keep only the rows that have their habitat type in a pond. We can do this with the filter option as we described it in one of the previous videos. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to write it out. And again, my personal favorite is the write_delim, because I can specify whatever delimiter I want. And my personal favorite for the delimiters is the semicolon, because it is one of the, in my opinion, one of the nicest signs that you could use for distinguishing columns. Now, very often, well, the space is used, but it's well, it has its own problems, in particular for the missing records. So in that case, there are multiple spaces after each other. Well, you can use comma, but depending on where you come from, so which country you come from, commas are sometimes used for, well, instead of a decimal point. So we don't have many times decimal point, but a decimal comma. So that might be confusing. Semicolon is not used that often, so that's why I love to use it for the delimitation of the columns when I am writing out any kind of file. So if there is nothing specific required, my go-to sign is the semicolon. So the write delim itself is also very easy to use. So basically you specify the file name that you want. And then in case you use the write delim, you also need to specify the delimiter. Again, if you check the help file, so there are a bunch of things that are considered by default. So, and also then later on described in more detail. So if you are not happy with any of these, you need to change them. There are below here the descriptions, actually what they mean, so you can read up on them. So we have these frogs here, we filtered, we are happy with it, and we want to write it out, and it can be done with a one simple click. And indeed, in this new file, there are only the frogs with the habitat type, which are in a pond, and the columns now are separated by semicolons as we specified. So again, the two very useful and very frequently used options are of reading in and writing out files from and to your hard disk. Definitely a very good idea to know about them in greater detail. So this was kind of a closure in this playlist of the most important and most frequently used R commands. Of course, in terms of importance and frequency of usage. This is a very subjective thing. So if you remember in the very first video, I told that, well, these are the R commands or functions that I use very frequently in my R scripts. So, well, I just felt it is useful also to you to know about them. So definitely check out the videos on this playlist, especially if you are a newcomer to R. By knowing these commands or these functions, you can do a large majority of the stuff, especially when it comes to work with genotype data in terms of data preparation or adjustment for analysis, for example, for Blink. Also, if you have your own favorites, of course, be sure to put them down in the comments below. Which R functions are the ones that you find particularly useful? From my side, I thank you for your time for this video and for this entire playlist, and I wish you a very nice day.